moment to salute him and to thank him for being with us and invite you to be a part of this conversation. For those of you who want to ask questions or join in later, uh, we'll be able to do that after we have a brief uh, dialogue between us. And we invite you to join us in that. But I just want to say right now, good evening, Ty. Good part of the world are you in now? Where are you calling us from?
Good evening, Ernest. Whoa. So excited to be here. Bonjour, everyone. Here in Lenape Hoking territory,
Mm,
Brooklyn, New York. So,
yes. Thank you. Wow. Beautiful.
uh-huh.
Yes. Well, welcome, my brother. Thank you so much. As I said earlier, I just imagine you as a young man, uh, embraced by your family and your community, and in a position to learn and receive the lessons and the transmissions from generations before. And so I'm just astonished about it. I think you're uniquely qualified to help guide this discussion because of your upbringing and what already was inside you. And I want to just kind of explore a couple of things that I learned from your bio. Looking at it, one is that you are a shapeshifter, right? What is the shapeshifter?
Yeah, good question. I put that in there because I think, shape shifting to me comes out of a cultural context, right? Having to do with my identity, having to do with being interdisciplinary artist, and also having to do with a person that is moving in and out of both a world of culture and also a world of a contemporary culture as well. So all the ways, like all that in between minutia, all that in between happenings, I feel like I'm continually shape shifting from one place to the next, whether it's through identity, culture, or time or space.
Okay, you're
Uh-huh.
metamorphosing and transcending and
Exactly.
oh, beautiful. Well, we're gonna try to catch that bug too, get a part of that train. Thank you, Ty.
Yes.
And your name, Ty, is it abbreviated, short for another word? Your
Yeah,
first.
it is. It is. Thai is short for Gijig, which
Oh,
is my spirit name or my native name, and that means wherever I go I make friends, or this like sky, or kind of like the motion of when you walk the grass turns green, or it's a storytelling name, so it also means wherever I go I make friends is
okay,
sort of like the whole history of the name. So
yeah.
uh
And
huh.
there's another terminology. Excuse my ignorance, but the term twin spirits is one of your inherent spirits qualities. So can you explain, enlighten me about that?
Yeah, yeah. So I definitely, identify as Nij Manitawag, right? So Nij Manitawag, and in Anishinaabe language, Nij Manitawag refers to, in our language as two spirits. And two spirits, oftentimes people think about it now in terms of the umbrella of gender. People refer to it as being like non-binary, or LGBTQ plus, or TGNC, or transgender, or but in fact, Nij Manitawag refers to the idea and notion to transcend gender, right?
Mm,
So to go beyond the binary, or to go beyond a construct that colonization has placed upon
mm,
human beings to operate in. So
wow,
yeah, so Nij Manitawag, that is the worldview or the perspective of what that term means. But nowadays, in contemporary city over here in New York, people just, two spirit could also mean, oh, that, being queer,
yeah.
essentially. Hmm.
Well, I think that quality, that trait exists in everyone somehow, where we're not aware of it or we're not cultivating it, we're not recognizing it and being able to develop it. But I think that since you have obviously been able to recognize and enhance that quality inside you, it makes you, I think, uniquely qualified to talk about transcending ethnic skin color or cultural habits and things like that. So I'm welcome you for that. And so, when did you witness or become apparent, aware that you had this particular calling? Was it as a young person growing up then?
Yeah, Ernest, this is such a great topic. I think this idea about, being niche manitawag or two spirit is so important because it is sort of having to do with a lot of the interior world that exists within, right, like humans. And as we know, this construct of race placed upon people and very, very important right now because of clearly how people are clocked on the streets, both visually and both interpersonally. But this idea about transcendency or transcending something is what I think is important about it is that we're sort of thinking about it as not to get quote unquote boxed in, right?
Mhm.
Not to adhere to specific kinds of constructs that people could identify themselves for themselves. And I think what's so awesome about having the term Nijmanitawag with Two Spirit is that it is saying there is a long, long history that comes out of that word, right? That since time immemorial, indigenous native people, in particular, the Anishinaabe people, have really thought about the entire inclusivity of how people are relating to either gender or relating to their sexual orientation or relating to human to another human as it relates to gender sexual orientation. So Nijmanitawag, when I was a youth growing up there in northern Wisconsin in the Great Lakes area, I actually didn't even know exactly what it was, and how to talk about it, what it meant to me specifically, because I think, just being a youth, I was able to, run around, who'd run around the woods. I lived in a small subsistence community that was located close to the reservation. But my mom, because she was this badass activist, individual,
Mhm.
she did not want to adhere to any kinds of constructs that
Mhm.
colonialism that right America had for her children and for my siblings. And so that being said, I feel totally lucky and privileged that I had the opportunity to grow up in nature, right? A place where our waters were still clean, a place where I got to learn the names of trees and plants, where I got to, spend summers with my grandmother, listening to her stories and hearing the stories in our language that were handed down from one generation to the next, right? So kind of now as an adult, thinking back to it, it really sort of shaped the worldview that I exist in now, right? So oftentimes the worldview now can somewhat be because it was a decolonized way that I was thinking about and experiencing, now operating in a colonized world. I'm like, wait a minute, what are all these boxes I have to check on these forms? What is this way that I'm forced to interact with people?
Mhm.
What does this terminology mean that I have to communicate with other people? So, so relating back to shape shifting, right? It's always
Mhm.
going back to the movement of a negotiation between language, between interacting between people, a relationship between asking questions that I don't know or asking for help when I need it, or really also showing up for other people and experiencing other cultures that I don't know about, right? And showing up in a way where I'm both, being supportive and building a reciprocal relationship versus one that is transactional, which I definitely feel like relates to this path of social justice.
Mhm. Yeah. Wow. Thank you.
Yeah,
We're
no,
going
thank you.
through
Woo.
a awful phase in a sense of the pandemic. We're going through a revolution in the sense of standing up against police brutality and injustices more than I've ever seen in my lifetime. And I
Wow.
see happening so many things we're going through now. And I'm wondering about the state of your cultural work and your work in indigenous communities and working with others. What would you say are the positive things that you're seeing, the things that really we can rely on and be assured of more? And what are some of the challenges you see out there? We can take our time and we can delve into each of those, but just kind of get a sense of what is the state of the struggle you see today from your perspective, strengths and weaknesses and challenges.
Well, first of all, Ernest, whoa, I just want to like pause and take that in. I was a little nervous to get on this like live, streaming thing with you because you are like, in my mind and everything, like social justice star, warrior. I mean, can I say all these things? Yes, absolutely. So I just wanted to say that because what you mentioned, you said in your lifetime, this was one of the times where these things are just ringing true in a new kind of way. And just to hear you say that really is like, you know, mind blowing to me and very, in a way. So first I wanted to say that because I'm, a little bit nervous. I'm like, Ernest McMillan, just wow, like just all of your work. You're a very inspirational individual to me. Um, let's see. Oh, where'd Ernest go? Is he there? Oh, give Ernest a compliment. Look what happened. Wait a minute, come back.
I think he may have gotten disconnected, Ty.
Oh, okay.
He may get disconnected, so we will
Yeah,
for just a
we
moment
will. We will wait.
because I know that the live got started late. So since we're at this quick intermission,
Yeah.
I know
Yes.
you all missed a little bit of introduction here. So I know that Ernest did a great job of introducing Ty, but I do want to quickly say that this program would not be possible without contributions from the National Endowment of the Arts, as well as the Office of Arts and Culture, the Dallas Office of Arts and Culture. So I do want to thank them. And I know that we did a land acknowledgement, and I won't read my whole statement again, but I do want to acknowledge again that Dallas is built on stolen land and was built by stolen labor. And all of our programs really work to unite us and build this together. So I'm really grateful that you all are here. So as soon as Ernest gets back, we will get back on this wonderful conversation. So briefly, he just messaged me. So if we'll just hold here, if there's anything else you wanted to talk about or ask or share, or even ask any of the individuals here, Ty, definitely feel free.
Yeah, well, I see many of Ernest's family in the Zoom room here if you're Facebook Live, which is so amazing to see multiple generations of people. And if folks are tuning in, we have everyone's from different places, I guess, right? Like Texas and New Mexico and other areas. So it's good to be here with you all. Thanks for coming out to support. I will give people a little background maybe before Ernest gets on too. And listen, being in conversations with Ernest like every week in terms of the organization for this conversation has been truly amazing. And maybe it's good I can be braggadocious about him while he's not here because he was like, Ty, tonight it's about you. And I'm like, Ernest, you are so prolific. If you're listening to this right now in the Facebook world, you should definitely check out Ernest's hundreds of articles over Google. Being a social justice activist and a civil rights leader of the 50s is so amazing and inspiring. Written books. I heard he's working on some films and various things. So check those out if you're just tuning in here too live. But I will say sculpting these conversations has been pretty amazing. I feel as though there is an intergenerational conversation that I've been having with Ernest that has been pretty pivotal, throughout the course of this pandemic with him. And, just also some funny things too, as it relates to talking about poetry, all the way to like activism, all the way to food, all the way to you name it. We've talked about it. So
I just want to interrupt and just
yeah.
say, Ty, it's so good to see you again.
Yeah.
We met at when we were working on the project at So Red. I was so impressed with you. I learned a lot of those short meetings that I had at that time. I went away just overwhelmed, and I'm glad to see you. I'm looking and listening for more knowledge of yours. because you've got so much to share. And I do thank you for having the opportunity for my ears to open up listening to you.
Good to see you, Ed. Yeah, thanks
Yeah,
so much. Such a
yeah,
good process that was.
yeah, it was.
Love it. Ernest is back. We missed you. Oh, but you're silent. Yeah.
My computer has its own brain, y'all. I'm so sorry. I
Oh,
missed
no
the ocean
worries,
and
Ernest.
stuff, so I'm gonna have to catch up with all this
Ernest,
wisdom that you've imparted.
no,
But
I basically was bragging about you and telling everyone about our conversations and food, music, poetry, you
yeah,
name it. We
okay,
were talking story, as my
yeah.
friends say.
But thank you, brother. I appreciate that. What did you talk all about? What obstacles we need to face from being stuck as we are? It seems too often in our work today. Uh, we want to unite. I think the spirit for unity is there, but there's a tendency to want to be uniform rather than united. You know what I'm saying? And kind of march in step where we were and not really embrace the differences, and trying to be true to our own cultural identity, with at the same time being respectful and honoring other uh, cultural traditions and lifestyles. So is that one of the obstacles you see at all?
Yeah, I think you know, I have a teacher. His name is Kevin Locke, and I think I feel very blessed to have met him on my journey. And Kevin kind of scooped me up when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And how I got to learn about other people besides the community that I grew up in was I actually got to travel around the world with him, predominantly in the Middle East and predominantly around Turtle Island or North America.
Mm,
And when I was a youth traveling with him, he was this like amazing flautist and dancer, and he told stories and educator. And what I did is I remember at that time was told just to listen, right? Like I was like filling my basket or filling my cup with all kinds of wonderful gems now that I think back and how grateful that experience was. But in terms of thinking about it culturally, what was so beneficial to me as a youth or a young person was the idea to listen to Kevin and some things that he was teaching about as it related to environmental justice.
mm,
But thinking about it now, he was truly talking about racial justice, and how he was also talking about cultures coming together, and how the steps and to scaffold a conversation and scaffold learning between people, because culture gets so complex that it actually takes time, right, to sit down and really have what we were commonly referring to as like visioning meetings, which is like literally sitting down with people for 4 hours or so, and talking about culture and talking about experience, and oftentimes that was over food. So we'd also eat a lot
yeah,
of food in
that's
in time,
exciting.
right? And I know pre-pandemic that's what we could do, but I think there is something to some of these, like, what I think are old school protocols between people to share stories with each other, because I think within these stories there's great learnings. And oftentimes now, because we are operate in a hyper colonized, assimilated contemporary society, we
Mm,
have to, like, right, often plan for that now, to take time to like figure out how to live up to our highest human potential or learnings, which often people are like call vacation, right? You're like, I'm gonna like actually take a break where I can like relax and like listen to ocean or lake or trees or friends, or so I think there's some wonderful things about the idea of resting and also listening. That resting can also be an active way of being creating the kin collective, right? Or elevating other people by dreaming forward. I don't know if that answered your question, but
yeah, it does. It
okay.
leads me to think about the pre-pandemic days when we can meet and gather, and we'll get able to get back to those days hopefully in the next year or less. I'm
Yeah.
wondering, in constructing meetings and gatherings, how can we honor and recognize and support this movement toward blending and becoming more allied or unified, working together. I know respecting language, you mentioned food is a great, powerful tool, but just in terms of respecting and running meetings and organizing gatherings, how can we really reinforce this notion practically for enhancing cultural ties and ethnic ties? Is there some magic bullets out there?
Yeah, I think, Ernest, before, when our little, you went into the abyss of the interweb somewhere and you went somewhere and then you came back, I was sort of talking about our conversations that we've had and kind of how lovely they've been. And I sort of, pulling back the curtain about how to plan for a conversation like this, I think is really important. And I was like, wow, Ernest really knows how to like host, right? Like, I think this is something that is so important. The idea about hosting, like, how do you host, right? People that come into your home, people that are a part of your network. How do you host a friend? How do you, so I kind of think about that and really was giving you a shout out about hosting me weekly through our conversations and really guiding us together in terms of scaffolding conversation to get to this evening, right? By you also sharing stories about your history and your past and things that you really liked and didn't like, and you were like, Ty, I don't know if we have time to talk about it, and I was like, please, Ernest, share a story, I want to know. And then we would like story share and swap, right? So to me it was like, oh yeah, right, like this, we are gonna like share a story with each other, we are going to exchange something that is reciprocal in nature, right?
Yeah.
And those kinds of things, like we are going to share vulnerability, we're going to share something very meaningful. And also in preparing and showing up to our conversations, I know that I wanted to be in the right state of being, or the right state of mind, heart, and spirit when we were like having a conversation that was truly talking about healing and liberation and justice, right? I was like, oh, it's with Ernest. We're going to talk about this. Here's our agenda. It's not going to be any old conversation. No, no. We
Yeah.
got to come together to truly come together heart to heart and have like that truth telling regenerative conversation. And when I say regenerative, I'm thinking about rejuvenation, right? I'm thinking about natural systems that were in place that have been taken away, stolen, or dismantled through colonization, through capitalism, and through racial injustice. So yeah.
You know what? I came up during a time when we had a real strict division of labor. We had the
Yeah.
leaders over here and the followers over there. We had the organizers over here and the artists over there. And we had this, all this rigid sense of I guess, mission or task. But today I see it's more kind of bleeding together. And this thing you mentioned about taking your time and reflecting, I think that aspect has been brought into our conversation, to our meetings, the importance of art, the importance of music, the importance of storytelling within our meetings. And rather than just have an agenda with a call to order and point A, point B, point C, and out of here by 8 o'clock kind of thing, if we could relax and then encompass the relationships and honor the people who've done that and celebrate and have more celebratory type atmosphere and get business done still. It may be even better because you have trust now, you have friendship, you have knowledge of each other more. So I appreciate that input. I think it's a valuable ingredient. It's a leap forward from when in my day. A big
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Ernest, I will say I'm so interested, in thinking about when you say your day and these meetings and stuff. I'm curious because I also, I'm torn. I'm like, I also see and feel and hear the need for, being strategic and being very specific about meeting. And when you say in your time, I'm curious, one, what you mean by that, and also if you wouldn't mind sharing a specific time where there was that kind of fire or urgency that you needed to do to organize. Like, I
Yeah,
was wondering if you think of a specific moment where you needed to
yeah.
bring the fire.
Well, I'll try to be brief and minimal as I can, but basically, we went through a period of ultra democracy where meetings lasted to 4 o'clock in the morning and every vote counted, and it's one person, one vote. And, you had to get that kind of consensus to more of a democratic centralist type organization to one where even more authoritarian one. And so I'm just happy to see we're kind of going back in a sense, or maybe it's considered going forward, full circle, to having more interaction and more interplay and more democratic type voices being held and leadership being shared. And it's not just the teacher over here and the student over here, but the student becomes the teacher and the teacher becomes the student as well. So having that kind of sense, that's what I'm really celebrating, seeing this movement today when you have people coming out in droves in the streets, being active in the polls. When I was in Ghana, I was happy to see that not happy to see, I had a revelation that one reason that Nkrumah was overthrown so easily by a handful of troops was because the people were not involved and engaged during the process of becoming free and liberated. So it was like their government rather than our government. And so if we can have more sense of ownership and partnership in that sense, I think that's the core ingredient we need to build trust, is to have that kind of partnership and those kind of relationships where we can depend and co-depend and interrelate with each other more. So I think that's a really advanced for today. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Ernest, did you wow, you stayed up till like 4 a.m. meeting? That's amazing.
In the Student Nonviolent Coordinator Committee, we had those kind of meetings. Yes.
Wow. Was it
Till a
because
point,
people were going
maybe.
back and forth?
Yes. Let me ask you something
Wow.
about
Amazing.
developing allyship. A lot of people came out to the marches and demonstrations during the summer and the fall, perhaps. And I'm wondering, what is the criteria for being a true ally? How can we become better allies to the Native people, for example? How can we become more than just sympathizers or people who said, "Oh, poor Indians," or be charitable, but really be compassionate and be in solidarity? How can we move from that state of being, seeing pity to becoming solidarity, true allies? What can we do to enhance that?
Ooh, Ernest, these questions. Wow.
Take your time. Take your time.
No. Thank you, my friend. No, I think there are, there's a lot, because I often think about that. How can I be in solidarity with my Black friends and relatives and people? I think it's it's so important. So I often, as you ask me this question, also think about how can I be that way for others. I think about growing up with Kevin. He says you don't have to be in the service to be of service. So I am constantly thinking about being in service to others. So I hope that and I actually challenge people to try to have radical generosity. I think that becomes really, really important as it relates to being with Native or Indigenous people. I think there's one way that has become really important to me most recently is to uphold Indigenous or Native leadership, right? Because I think in terms of dismantling hierarchies and sort of creating decolonization, it is creating the circle of inclusivity. And that to me is very important. I think about this shape of a circle, and the circle to me has been one that has stayed with me since I was a youngster. And this circle, the shape of a circle, is talking about how we are all together in that great hoop or great circle of life, that there's no one necessarily like in front or there's no one necessarily behind, but we're all, equal, so to speak. But that is a really hard design to achieve because of systematic racialization, because of constructs that are placed on, right? So it's the idea to inspire to try to achieve that circle. The circle became important because it's also, you know, in our stories, it's steeped in our traditional teachings of the Anishinaabe people. And it's you know, not a trapezoid or a triangle, right? But a circle, because a circle, there are no corners to hide in, that everybody is at the front. So I think the society that we live in today, in terms of when I say support Native leadership, isn't sort of looking at it as a tiered method, or that shape of a triangle where there's someone on top and there's like this trickle down, right? But I feel in service of supporting Native people, specifically Indigenous women, Native people, that we are actually rounding out what has been done from passed down histories to Native Indigenous people. And what was important in this conversation today, and talking with you, Ernest, too, is about creating solidarity between Black, Native, Indigenous people, right? Because I feel like our histories are long overdue, and they are definitely like intertwined and related by the land, whether the land was stolen or whether there was forced labor on it, or whether, you know, folks have descendants in the Trail of Tears, or long walks to Fort Sumner, or, you know, there are so many of these historic atrocities that happen, that I feel like truly the remembrance, you know, of these historic atrocities is important. But then I think about utilizing that as fuel to gain wisdom and knowledge for the future. And that to me is like uplifting Native Indigenous leadership in spaces. There's a lot of healing that needs to happen. So I'm also looking forward to non-Native people also holding space in healing communities. And that is why I feel like I think about my Black brothers and sisters and family and friends, that being so crucial that we are together, because you know, I feel like there's so much racial injustice, you know, right now on the lands of Mother Earth, as we call her, Aki, that there is a type of healing that we can come together to have. So I think, to answer your question about allyship, about inclusivity, about what do we need to do, I think we need to do everything that we can to move supremacy out of the way.
Okay. Mm.
Every day, every day.
Ashe. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. And then we have the post-traumatic stress syndrome. I call it internalized oppression within us. So that we've been haunted by. And I even get to this point where I see it witness where people argue over leadership, saying that my group should be in the leader because we've been more oppressed than you, or we've been more exploited than you, or we've gone through harder times. So we deserve to be this, that, and the other. So it's even competing over who can be more victimized than the other. And so I've seen it, you know, perverse sense of how we've been able to express our need to resist oppression, but at the same time, we've been embedded so much in ourselves. And so the point about healing, I'm hearing you saying, is an important part of this whole process, and that's a lifelong journey in a way. So wherever we are, we can start doing something to become more whole, in a sense. And can you tell me about some of those steps you've taken to become more healthy as a person, as an individual, not necessarily with a group, but just within yourself?
Yeah. Ernest, you know I love talking about this. And
We love hearing it. We
so
love learning.
important. I think that, you know, sort of going back to what you said about, you know, this, as people are referring to it as like oppression Olympics right now, right? Like, what about me? Or, you know, my story is more important, you know, or my people are, you know, suffering here. And so I think it's, you know, I think about supremacy and that internalized oppression that you're talking about, and supremacy creating products of even weaponizing, you know, BIPOC community, people who are oppressed against one another. So I think that's the first step also, or one of the first steps on the road to healing, because of that passed down historic trauma. And I feel like at the same time, looking forward into the future, right? Because there's a past, present, and future. Looking forward to the future of how can we also flip the script, if you will, and look at passed down historic trauma, but also look at passed down historic growth, right? I think about that and it gives me hope. And I'm like, wow, think of all that wisdom that like Chief Buffalo or Black Elk or, even most recently, Eddie Benton Bonet had like in history, and thinking about if trauma also does exist, then collective wisdom also exists at the same time. Like that is unbelievably motivating and provides hope, I think. And so some of those ways that I found as a Anishinaabe individual and person of like Horido Shoni too from my mother's side, I think about invoking, I guess, a sense of nourishment. And how do I think about nourishment? I think about, wow, going back to various protocols that I know that work for myself, such as, smudging, which is, lighting sage or sweetgrass or cedar, depending on the type of medicine that I have. And oftentimes indoors, or if I'm pre-COVID, am not able to do that in art institutions, which is actually, put into the laws and everything of just policy that as Native people, we should be able to do this, right? It's written in treaties that, I got sent to me. If you, on my shelf back here, I have like smud spray. So I have a spray that's a tincture of sweetgrass and sage. And if I'm having a hard time spraying around my computer, I got my rocks happening. I think about what it's like to sing a song, right? Sing a song just with myself and not have it be performative, right? Just to sit and to sing a song, to hear my voice in a different kind of way, a singing voice that was given to, babies, youth when you come into the world, right? Crying about something, shouting about something, screaming about something, chanting about something. So I think about these things that were already put in place for people to heal, and specifically, Native people on the path of liberation. I think there's something else too, I think, Ernest, as it relates to healing, is invoking remembering or re-remembering, and that's relating to blood memory. So even you and I, in our phone calls and conversations, blood memory, invoking stories of the past, right? Talking about the origin story of how something came to be or how something happened. So, asking you what happened at 4 a.m. that one May 15th night when it was raining, all those details, become so important. The idea of remembering that, because that is truth, right? It's truth telling. So, yeah. What about you? What do you think about this question?
I'm more thankful for recognizing the role of my ancestors. I have a grandfather who was the first generation out of enslavement, who built a hospital in Dallas, Texas. I have ancestors who came up during the time when the Klan was in a majority of political action in Dallas County, and where there were homes burned down because people dared to speak up or stand up, or people lynched, dragged out of their beds. And so during that time of life and the period of our people, that you had brave souls that stood up and took responsibility for where they are. So I see those stories had to be rekindled and retold. I have a niece not too far from you. Her name is Ava, and her husband, Omari, who are helping to guide us to develop some new narratives, to do research and study about what are the roots of Juneteenth? What was emancipation really about? What was the American Civil Revolutionary War truly about? And looking at, we reverse those narratives, because I grew up at a time when we were taught that we were saved from Africa by white people, and we were happy to be enslaved. So growing up with that kind of no worth sense, and paying homage to this figure who was our oppressor, was just, we need to flip that script. So I see young people taking that narrative up and in raising their children to understand that and providing the cultural support for them to grow and flourish, despite the obstacles that presented through the school system and through the economy and through the media. So we got a lot going against us, but there's a fire being lit, you know, and a flame still going on to spread that the truth out to our young generation and children yet to be born. So I'm hopeful about that. You know.
Wow, that's powerful, Ernest. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Appreciate
You know what?
that.
I want to just take a pause. Thank you for a moment. Just take a pause and give a chance for our listeners to see if they want to ask any questions. I want to ask Cheyenne if she wouldn't mind playing that Grammy Award-winning piece of music that you provided us. So if you could just take a few moments, Cheyenne, to just play that, maybe it'll take about 2 minutes of that and we can come back to it later. And just listen to this and help us inspire, carry the conversation among others and bring everybody into the fold.
Sorry about that, everybody. I will start that again. Sorry about that.
We put Cheyenne on the spot because we had no idea we were going to do this at this moment. So be patient. Thank you.
Whitney.
you. Thank you. Uh, Ty, I'm, I'm wondering what the context of that song. I think the title is something like "Call to the People." Is that correct? What can you give us a little context how that song is serves?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So yeah, the song it's like called to me great mystery and called to the people, and it is Gitchimanidu refers to this great being or spirit, and I guess some people refer to it as like God, but I think it's more about the translation is more about mystery. Like we don't know what it is, right? So it's like the great mystery, this thing that, and the idea here is that it exists something that is larger than the human form or human being, and in such way to seek refuge, to seek healing, and to seek, I guess I guess like humbleness, which
Mm,
is something that I keep coming back to in these most recent times of during the pandemic is being humble. So when we sing these songs, in my community, it's the idea, right? You can hear the vocal intonation going so high, as some people call like, oh, this falsetto kind of voice, but it is in fact being like walking with your heart on your sleeve or being vulnerable at every opportunity, and to humble yourself to do so with every single being, two-legged, four-legged, winged, or rooted that you come in contact with. And that becomes a huge challenge, today, right? Because of the way at which both concert and chaos are working for one another, at this time. So it becomes a continual balancing and continually self-check about how to do that. So that path it's a tough one to walk, right? It's as they say, you know, it, it's a
awesome.
humbled one.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna ask you one more question, then I'm gonna turn it over to the guys. If you could just give us an idea of what you see as the state of the cultural work today, as far as building these bridges toward more inter-ethnic, intercultural relationships. Do you have any examples you could point to? Any resources you could share with us we could go to kind of to give us some more on the ground kind of follow up with this question? Just kind of how do you see and envision the future as well?
Yeah, so I guess some resources that are very helpful is totally incredible read that I love and can continue to read is a book called Braiding Sweetgrass, which is a amazing book that by an ethnobotanist named Robin Kimmer, who talks about language, who talks about plant life, and to me talks about the artfulness of reciprocity and reciprocal relationships. I think, every time I read it, I gain something new about how I need to sometimes readjust my state of being, right? My mind, my heart, and myself constantly. Because it talks about all things being sentient, including the plants, which is in Anishinaabe worldview, we see rocks, we see plants, we see trees as our relatives, right? In the language, they are animate objects, right? They're just not like a subject that we sort of talk about. And that's some of the limitations, I think, that colonization and that English language has given to people, right? And has stripped and taken away is language. That's one way of taking away someone's culture. So I think this idea about language most recently has become really important. That's like a wonderful read if folks want to. The book on tape is also amazing. The literature is great. I also think about too in contemporary times, any kind of literature that has, as you were saying, Ernest, reclaiming the narrative. So something that is written by an identifiable Native Indigenous person that talks about and their lived experience. I feel like there's something about valuing lived experience that becomes so important. I will mention a few articles that you're in, Ernest, that I've read over the Google about your work, which have been totally inspiring. One of them is Continue His Lifelong Fight of the D magazine, which is, I read that, Ernest, and I was truly inspired by that. You talking about history and talking about, you know, why it's important we do justice work right now. But what I was struck in that article that you were featured in too was about actually different countries around the globe, how people were sort of both connecting, both in a similar kind of way, and also how each country is kind of different. So I think about this on Turtle Island here in the United States, where there was over 500,000 languages spoken, right? And now there's only like 562 some odd federally recognized tribes, right? And that is all based on language. So language is a vital, important part of each nation or community on Turtle Island. Language is the thing that teaches people about worldview. Um, I think it's important wherever you are located in Turtle Island here that to make informed relations with local native or indigenous people, because they'll tell you about the land, and the land, right, being Mother Earth, or the land being a relation to the native people. So I kind of was thinking about that as well. And then I'm happy to also, if folks want like a whole list of favorite films and things too, classic Smoke Signals, of course.
I
There
think
was
that.
one of my favorite scenes that I'll describe as there was a scene in that film, for example, which, you know, as a youngster, I learned a lot watching that film. And it's there was a community table where there was this huge feast that was happening. You know, they had all of the food there. And in this scene, which is a classic, mind you, in a contemporary native context, there's someone standing there over the feast food. And of course, bread becomes very important to the feast and the food. And a grandmother stands over that food, and she talks about all the people that showed up to this feast. And what's described in the film and the scene is that, oh, there was 100 people that showed up to this feast. So 100 people, right? So think about being an organizer, organize everything. And at the table, there were only 50 pieces of fry bread, right? So 100 people, 50 pieces of fry. Every single person needs a piece of bread, right? So they were like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? What is she going to do? So they describe in the film, she takes that piece of fry bread, because they're very large, circular like shape, right? She takes that piece of fry bread and she rips it in half. And there you have 100 pieces of fry bread, right? For 100 people.
Exactly.
Right? So the idea that every single person needs to get fed, and how are you going to feed all the people that show up, right? So important.
Yeah. I also love that movie Smoke Signals too, because it's about this young man reclaiming his father's ashes, and he gets healed in that process of going to claim his father's ashes and put it back where it came from, you know, in the ocean.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
And one more thing, could you
absolutely.
please restate the name of that book you mentioned at the top and the author?
Yeah, it is a book called Braiding Sweetgrass, and I will put
Raining
that.
Regrets.
Yeah, Braiding Sweetgrass,
Oh, okay.
by Robin Kilmer. I will, yeah, I'll post that in the chat too.
All right. Thank you.
And yeah, Kimmer is how the last
Okay.
name is spelled.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great. Ernest, what's your if you had to pick a film, book, article, inspiration for the peoples and your on your journey, what has been
Uh,
some
it was so
inspiring
many.
pieces
There
of
was,
art to you?
it's so many, but I'll go back to like 1958, 59. This movie was censored and not allowed in the United States. And it's called Tamango. It's about this group of enslaved men and women on a ship coming to the United States and how they rose up to fight against it. And then, of course, the Battle of Algiers is one of my favorites. So I can go on and on, but I'm going to stop right there. And thank you, though. But I can put a list together happily. I want to ask Cheyenne if she could please let us know if there are any outstanding questions from Facebook. And if not, we can go directly to those on Zoom. Cheyenne, do you have any questions that you want to share with us? from
We
our
don't
Facebook audience?
any questions on Facebook yet. I've shared any comments so far, but there's not any actual questions quite
Okay. We'll take the comments.
yet.
Do you want to share the comments?
Sure. So I've shared them. I've shared them in the chat over here. Mostly just people saying that the conversation's amazing and that they're enjoying the dialogue. Our longest comment, though, from Elsa Mendez. So wonderful to catch this beautiful dialogue between the two such insightful people. Ty, sending love and gratitude from New Mexico for you and all you are continuing to share with us. And Mr. McMillan, what an honor to listen to you.
Oh,
Wow.
thank you. Any questions from our Zoom friends today? Any comments or questions? You're welcome.
Ty, when you begin to speak and you mentioned Kevin Locke, I have to say there's always that whatever degree of separation. I know Kevin through playing the Native American flute, and it was kind of like, oh man, that's great. I love it.
Oh yeah.
It's just that thing that connects us. When we think that maybe we don't have that much in common and realize that we have more in common than we think.
Exactly. And Carmen is modest, but she's an expert flutist. And we would love to have her perform someday. She's outstanding. Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you,
That's
Ernest.
so great.
I have a question or comment, and just my heart is so full seeing you both together. So Ty, Dad, I love you both. I have a question around fear. And you talked a little bit about this, Ty, around being vulnerable and sort of leaning into it. But my question really is around, how do you all move through fear? That could be fear of perception, that could be fear of saying the wrong thing, that could be fear of not being enough, that can be fear of self-doubt. But thinking about the healing and activism work, we all get scared. So I'm just curious if you have any insights around moving through the fear, or realizing maybe we don't need to be afraid. I don't know, but just dealing with fear and doubt, especially in this world when everything is recorded and everything is shared. And how do you move through that to do the work and to be fully present? And again, thank you both, because, you know, all the things.
Ty, go ahead. I'm gonna let you jump in that one.
Oh wow. Ernest, I was like, I wonder what Ernest is gonna say. Wow. Okay, I'll start and then I'll pass to you, Ernest. Thank you. I'm so appreciative of the space. Yeah, as it relates to fear, you know, and thinking about, like, I think about that quite often, I think, because, you know, especially coming from my community and going in different spaces and new areas too, about learning a new culture and having to learn, you know, quadruple at the same time. I think I actually think about, like, when I go into really steeped, arduous conversations and meetings and things like that, I actually think about ancestors past, which become really important for me. I think, you know, there's a type of liberation and power. I think about, you know, them just like right there on my shoulders or hands on my back. And a lot of times, often, that I've learned in my community is to practice the visualization of carrying them with me. You know, I typically, if you know me, wear necklaces and things like that around my neck, either shown or not shown. To me, you know, like this one is a wampum necklace, and that, to me, even something as small as that, gives me a tangible feeling of being connected to my culture or people, or knowing the story of where that necklace came from as it rests on my body, where oftentimes, you know, bodies become, of course, like political themes in political spaces, being a, you know, two-spirit, indigiqueer, like indigenous person. So I think about that, but I definitely am so grateful, because I in terms of ancestors past, but then I also think about, at the same time, future generations to come, right? And I often say this from our teacher in Anishinaabe country, Winona LaDuke, that thinks about, you know, she says, if you're not dreaming 7 generations ahead, you're not dreaming big enough. And that's something that I think about constantly. And I'm like, wow, I have to sort of persevere in this moment where maybe I don't feel like it or I get too afraid. I think about the youth in the future, and I think about what I need to do that my ancestors did for me in that single moment. And oftentimes that's geared up through new ritual, through like the smudging, or for taking an extra breath, or for getting away mind chatter that tells me I'm an imposter and I shouldn't be in said meeting, or I shouldn't be a part of something. And then some other things that I do too is ensuring that my circle of friends and relatives are so supportive all the time. Because I think, like, in a world where things are moving so fast, in a world where there's just no time, and time being one of the things that contribute to mind chatter, it's a really important, that circle of friends, you know, people that you can count on, people that you can call no matter what, to remind you of aspects that, you know, for some reason you have shut out or forgotten, which become really, really important. So again, focusing on those relations, I think about in terms of fear. What about you, Ernest?
Wow. Thank you, Defina, for that question. And I think there's no real answer to it. Just you can just point blank, because there's so many aspects to it. I've now always faced my fears, and I've run away from fears, and I've doubted myself to be able to handle situations. So I think a lot of it has to do with being thrust in situations where you see people, brave people, courageous people, stand up, and they inspire you. As I was in the Deep South, in Selma and Southwest Georgia, people having their churches burned, or they're fired or evicted from their land, and they're still resilient and ready to fight. And you're there with them, say, how can I help you? You know, basically, because they're the ones who are leading the charge. Growing up as a young person, we feel invincible, you know, ain't nothing gonna happen to me. So sometimes I bite my nails and winch, but I think what's the things I've done, because I thought nothing could happen to me. But when that chill sets down and you realize that you're just stupid, ignorant boy trying to do some things that you shouldn't be doing, and you survive, is one thing. The other is recognizing your ancestors. I light a candle every morning for my mother's side of the family, my father's side of the family, and those who've gone before me, people who I've loved and lost. And I know they have their invisible hands around me and are guiding me. So that helps me a lot. So mentors as well, people like Jim Foreman, Willie Ricks, people like that, who their boldness and their courageousness are just kind of contagious in a way. And I want to recognize there's a difference between being courageous and being brave. You know, I think courageous is stepping out there not sure what the hell is going to happen. And despite your fear, you persist. And so I don't know what actually you can point to that said it gives you that nudge to go on despite the fear, overcoming it. But it's a kind of things you build up inside, to where you may face the fear and do realize that, hey, it wasn't so devastating after all. I can do this. I can do better. You know, I can handle this. And you build confidence and trust in yourself, and more self-reliance and more faith reliance as well, because there's no answer to some of the predicaments we go through other than there's a greater force beyond me that's guiding me. So having a trust in that, you know, and leaning not unto your own understanding, can I say from Proverbs, you know, but having trust in that greater power, it enables you to go forward too. So all of those things, just kind of a hodgepodge that I can't draw on any time, but they're there and they're available, not just to me, but to everyone. So I'm thankful for that.
Thank you both. Thank you. Thank you.
Ooh, Ernest, whoa. I love that you brought up courage. I was totally, like, literally early today was thinking and contemplating on that word courage. And thank you so much for that.
Heart, right? Comes from the word heart. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like courage.
Yeah.
Ooh, so good.
A little time left. If anybody is not prepared to go forward, I'd like to share with you what's coming up in the next few days. Did anybody have their hand up? Anything? Okay. and then we'll get a closing comment, maybe some more music from Ty. But basically, on this week, we'll have one more course coming up. That'll be on Thursday, and it'll be involving a G generation and a baby boomer talking to each other about the struggle they're going through. So it'll be Ileana Valdez, who's a senior at Yale University, who's a young leader out of Dallas, along with John Fullenwinder, who is a veteran of the civil rights and human rights struggle, who's been a pioneer in fighting against Confederate monuments to police brutality and all of those things. He'll be there and they'll have a conversation. That'll be on this Thursday at the same time at 6:30. And then on next week, we'll look at on Tuesday, which will be the 8th of December at 6:30, we'll have a discussion around how can we forge better interfaith relationships, go beyond our own strict understanding of walls of dogmas, and how can we embrace other faiths and work closer together. And Dr. Robert Hunt will lead that discussion. And I'm anxious to look forward to that. And then we'll have it all wrapped up with Eva Ataguin, who will be on hand for us on December the 9th, which is the following day, that Wednesday, would talk to us on how we can awaken hearts and how can we develop our consciousness to be and look at all these things we talk about, from cultural to faith to generational gaps. How can we take these things we've learned from these 3 or 4 sessions and kind of put a handle on it, so to speak. So I think Eva is being attentive to all we're talking about, and she has access to the film, and she can't be with us tonight. And so she'll be on hand to kind of help wrap things up, quote unquote, with us. So I'm looking forward to the next 3 courses, but I'm in awe of our present state where we are now, and Ty's willingness and the capability of being present and sharing all those powerful treasures with us today. Thank you, Ty.
Thank you, Ernest, for having me. So many gems in this conversation.
Any closing comments before we get your music to take us home?
Let's see. Well, I want to give my mom a shout out.
Yes.
I don't think I'll give my mom a shout out. I want to give my mom a shout out because, you know, in hearing you think and thinking about courage and sort of like what you mentioned and sort of, you know, meditating on different people that influenced in life, I was thinking about my mom, actually, who has come to me a lot. And I was like, wow, being in a household where there was such a strong, powerful Indigenous female presence truly shaped my life. She taught me, you know, the idea about nourishing imagination to shape and redefine culture and society, to continually to both, you know, do the work, but also decentralize self. So, right, as I think about decolonization or indigenization, right? And then she also taught me like about colliding and layering and world building. So interconnecting all the elements, that they don't have to be separate, right? They don't have to be siloed, that doing justice and artwork and, you know, community organizing, all those things can be interconnected, and those can like make and shape and shift minds and hearts. So that's something. And then the last thing I was thinking, no doubt, on this road of healing and giving light, is she also taught me the idea about infinite possibilities, right? Infinite possibilities. And I was thinking about courage, and that, right, it's like could be like in her and me observing her was like courage, like that grace under pressure, right? She had so much pressure upon her, you know, being an activist in her own right, working on the Indian Child Welfare Act and sort of working in, you know, different halfway homes with folks when we would go to the cities. But the infinite possibilities giving that to people could be so changing, because I was thinking about relationship, about, again, how to build that, but how when you start to build, how you can then begin to improvise, right? And then still have that trust there. And that's all in infinite possibility. So wanted to give my mom a shout out on the here with you all and bring her to this circle, because really appreciate you all and love seeing the families here and your relatives, Ernest.
Thank you. Can we say your mother's name? What is her name?
Yeah, it's Patricia Defoe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
We're honored for all the spirit we've witnessed today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Hope you stay tuned and be with us in the future. God bless. Thank you. Diane, do you have anything you want to close with?
Yes, really quickly, I just want to say, first, I know that that Priscilla was asking where we can follow Ty's work, and there are some comments in the chat box here that I will copy over to Facebook if anybody would like to follow Ty's work or see anything else that he is working on, which I'm sure that there are plenty who do. So please definitely follow all of that. And then again, as Ernest had stated, please join us for the rest of these conversations. I've said it probably 1,000 times now, but I think conversations are some of the most important that we can be having right now, learning to work together. So please do, if you're not sure if you've signed up for the entire course, send me an email. I'm the one who sent you the link for tonight, so you can just reply to that if you're not sure, or if you want to invite any of your friends, anybody that you think would be interested in hearing these conversations, please reach out and I can reach out to them as well. But thank you, Ernest, and of course, thank you, Ty, and I will send us out with that music.
All right, thank you.
May I just say one thing I would like to say to you, Ty, is thank you for your presence here. And you present so much calmness and peace. And as an elder, I'm trying to maneuver my way through calmness and peace. But many times passion, I think, manifests itself in outward, not aggression, but assertiveness. But in you, I see a quiet, warm passion. And you are someone I look up to now. And I hope to be able to attain that passion in a quiet form like you. Thank you for your presence here.
Sure. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. With some music.
Catherine.
Yo, Yo Whitney, yo, hi, yo Whitney, yo, hi, yo Washington, yo Washington, yo Washington, yo Washington, Whitney, yo, yo Whitney, yo. Yo Whitney, yo, hi, yo Whitney, yo, hi. Yo Washington, yo Washington, hey, yo Washington, yo Washington, hey, Whitney, yo, yo Whitney, yo, yo Whitney, yo, hi, hey, yo Whitney, yo, hi, hey. Yo Washington, yo Washington, hey, yo Washington, yo Washington, hey, Whitney, yo, yo Whitney, yo, yo Whitney, yo, hi, hey, yo Whitney, yo, hi, hey. Yo Whitney, yo, hi, yeah. Yo